Direct Truth Podcast. The Ego Demystified. There are ways in which words and ideas and concepts are used in society, and then there is the truth. Society and the world has its own language, its own way of looking at things, and this runs parallel to the truth and never intersects with the truth. It is almost like every word has two meanings, the societal meaning and the truth. If one mentions the word ego and sees the way that it is used in society, he notices that it is used with regard to self-aggrandizement, self-promotion, conceit, arrogance. This is what comes to mind in society when one uses the word ego. As a result, this misguided representation leads to a further misguided representation, which is the opposite, called humility. So therefore, a person tries to not show self-aggrandizement, tries to show self-deprecation, and these are also false. So as can be seen, one false thing leads to another. What is the truth about the ego? The ego has nothing to do with self-aggrandizement and self-promotion and conceit and arrogance, for these are insecurity. They are not ego. Ego is far more fundamental than that, far more subtle, far more nuanced, far below the radar of human investigation and human intellect. The ego is not about how great someone is. The ego is that he exists at all. This is a seminal truth, and it is critical to understand because the ego is perhaps the greatest problem of a human's life. It is the greatest source of his pains and miseries. There is much talk in the world of the so-called evolved and spiritual. Those who consider themselves well-read and progressive, to say things like, I wish to become egoless. I don't want to have ego. And these are all manifestations of ego, for they are simply exchanging the image of an ego-filled person to the image of an egoless one. Arriving at anywhere does not stem from trying to become something. It stems from being fed up with something. It stems from wanting to arrive at the end instead of a beginning. The falseness of ego lies precisely in its claim that the person exists, that the person with his name and form and personality actually exists. That is the entire detriment of ego. When a person wishes to be listened to, even though he may be saying something that is helpful, when a person seeks to be appreciated, even though what he may have done deserves appreciation in every way, if a person feels pride, even though his success may naturally justify such pride, when a person feels hurt, even though the thing that was said or done to him was indeed harmful and hurtful. As you can see from these examples, they are not illogical. There is nothing wrong. There's no mistake. There's nothing that one should or should not do. It is not that one should not get hurt. It is not that one should refrain from being prideful, because that will just be another act. The understanding is not that one should change, but that the very reason that the hurt and the pride and all of these things arise is precisely because of the firm presence of ego. It is not wrong. There is nothing wrong. If the ego is present, these things will happen. It does not mean that the ego should not be present. If one wishes to live this way, it is fine. But a life lived through ego is a life of endless disappointment. For very few things actually go a person's way. And the ego can never be satisfied. This is not a good or a bad thing. It is simply learning about this beast known as the ego, and learning that it destroys human lives. For as a man lives his life through the lens and the vehicle of ego, he is assaulted at every turn, for he himself sets up the assault. He brings expectation and hope and demand, and even as I say these words, something inside your mind is saying, you are right. I should not expect. I should not hope. I should not demand. And there is no referendum here. All of your life you have been used to people telling you what to do. All of your life you have been used to people telling you that this is wrong and this is right. And therefore it is natural for you to assume that I am doing the same thing, for that is all that you have ever known. But what is spoken in this small corner of the world, in this domain, is truth. No implication, no reverse psychology, no attempt to convince, no attempt to change, no should not. Just truth, just as it is. So as a person lives through ego, then everything that he hears and everything that he does and everything in every event that happens to him, it is instantly compared against the way that his ego would wish it to be, which is always, obviously, wished to be in his favor, wished to be in the ego's favor, wished to acknowledge and celebrate and reiterate and underscore the fact that he not only exists, but he needs some form of gain. And one can naturally see, if he is inquisitive, that living a life in such ways is a setup for disaster. For the only way that it could not be a disaster is if even a fraction or many or most or all of the things that he encountered and all the people that he encountered went his way. And this will never happen. This is not how the world works. Therefore, he is doomed from the start. The understanding, therefore, is not that ego is wrong, not that one should disingenuously try to become egoless and all of this spiritual nonsense. It is an understanding of what is it that is afflicting me? What is it that is causing me pain? What is the natural cause and effect? This is the understanding. And if one understands, then he has a possibility to genuinely arrive at a place in which the afflictions no longer arise. He is doing it because he no longer seeks affliction. He is doing it because he has recognized the cause and effect, in this particular instance, of ego. He is not doing it because it's healthy or good or proper or spiritual. He isn't doing it to get better. In the same way that he would avoid a hot stove. In the same way that he would avoid gunshots. He isn't doing those things to get better or because it's healthy or proper. He is doing it because he clearly realizes that a hot stove and gunshots destroy him. They burn him. They kill him. It is a natural recognition and understanding of cause and effect. The ego has indeed destroyed every human life. The journey to rid oneself of it, based upon truth and understanding, is perhaps the most direct path to human freedom. It is a central and seminal journey of a human life. This is Kapil Gupta. Namaste.